Clarence Thomas is the type of Harriet Tubman would have had to pop in the woods to keep his big mouth shut. Clarence Thomas is the type of who would have told Rosa Parks, go and give up that seat to that white man so we can go. Clarence Thomas is the type of that would have conspired with other to take out Malcolm X. Every door that has been opened to make his life easier, every door that has been opened to clear the path for him to sit in the seat that he sits in today, he has done everything to close it. To strip key functions away of the Voting Rights Act is asinine. As a black man from Georgia, who once upon a time did not even speak English, he spoke the native language of Haiti. A man that has come that far turns on his own people. It is beyond belief. And ever since the Supreme Court made that ruling on the Voting Rights Act, all these southern states have moved to do what? Restrict the votes of African Americans.
This name right here is a threat to everything that is black and that's black built in this country. Did you guys see the movie Django? That is who this person is. They are the biggest threat to all of us and everything that people like Martin Luther King, people like all of the philanthropists in the world, everything that's built on black, this person hates that. And the same door that he came through, he wants to close it behind all of us or all that's coming behind him in legal, as a judge, as an attorney, all of it. He wants to lock all those opportunities that he had from all of us. By far the biggest threat. Share the video.
Here's a guy who, by his own admission, and there should be no shame in this, by the way, got into Yale Law School because of affirmative action. I think that was fabulous. I think nothing wrong with it. He apparently is ashamed of it, so much so that once he became a jurist on the courts, he decided his first and foremost obligation, apparently, was to help usher out the very programs that had opened the door for him. I'm not sure how to think about that except to believe that that is someone who does not have a problem with the system of white supremacy that marginalizes other black folks as long as he got his. And he got his, and then he got out and basically said, that's it, we're done with that. I think if you look at his rulings, and particularly if you contrast his behavior as a judge and as a justice with the man he replaced on the court, Thurgood Marshall, you know, it's very interesting to see that one of the greatest jurists in American history when it comes to civil rights and when it comes to human rights and progressivism was replaced by one of the most reactionary justices because George H.W. Bush knew that you had to replace the black justice with another black justice. He didn't want to replace him, however, with the black justice that had a connection to the movement, that had a connection to the struggle. So he found one that had no connection to the struggle and, if anything, was ready to spit on the struggle. You look at what Clarence Thomas has said in these voting rights cases. He is perfectly prepared, apparently, to uproot the Voting Rights Act of 1965 because he thinks, as do many of his white colleagues, that we can trust the states that have a history of racism to just do everything right, which of course is absurd. The only reason they've been doing things right lately is because there's a law in place that forces them to do things right. And as Justice Ginsburg said, to say that you can get rid of that law just because it's working right now is like saying that I don't need my umbrella when it's raining because I'm not getting wet. Now, you're not getting wet because you got an umbrella. That's why.
Is Clarence Thomas considered an Uncle Tom? But what I do know right now is that he is more voting for his class than his culture, because his class is that of the 1%. He believes that he's a part of an elite group rather than remembering the culture that brought him up. Now, I can't speak to that culture, but I can respect it. And I still can't imagine that someone of that culture would then burn the bridges that helped him get to where he wanted to go for millions of black people across this country. How is that possible? And why isn't there a battle cry asking for his resignation for what he's done to his own people?
If Clarence Thomas has 0 haters, that means I've been run over and killed by a PT Cruiser. Because Clarence Thomas should have never been a Supreme Court justice. Had we listened to this black woman, he would have been in the back of a police car and not on the bench of the Supreme Court. In 1991, Thurgood Marshall retires from the Supreme Court. Big Bush says, hey, we need a black and a Republican to replace him. Who does he pick? Clarence Thomas. The Senate Judiciary Committee sent a subpoena to a black woman in Oklahoma named Anita Hill. But why? Well, in 1981, Clarence Thomas is working for the Department of Education. In 1982, Ronald Reagan gives him a job to chair the EEOC. In all three of these years, he had a black woman named Anita Hill working up under him. And in all three of these years, he sexually harassed this woman. Anita says that for 3 years, Clarence begged her to go on a date with him, would bring up his manhood in the workplace, would talk about his pubes and things of that nature, would talk about explicit films, all in the workplace during the 9 to 5. Anita came in to testify before the Senate Judiciary Committee to tell her story. The only problem is the people she was testifying before were 14 white men, and they weren't trying to hear anything she had to say. Frankly, a lot of their line of questioning was disrespectful.
Committee, what was the most embarrassing of all the incidences that you have alleged? You testified this morning that the most embarrassing question involved, that's not too bad, women's large breasts. That's a word. Are you interested in writing a book? It is appropriate to ask Professor Hill anything any member wishes to ask her to plumb the depths of her credibility. You are not now drawing a conclusion that Judge Thomas sexually harassed you.
Yes, I am drawing that conclusion. That's
Well, I
fine.
understand.
Anita tells her story in excruciating detail. Clarence responds and calls this nothing but a high-tech lynching. And that was it. Clarence Thomas still becomes a Supreme Court justice. Anita Hill goes back to her life as a professor at Oklahoma State. She receives death threats, and nobody believes her. Clarence Thomas wouldn't speak about this, wouldn't even really deny the allegations until he spoke about it in his 2007 book, My Grandfather's Son, where he called Anita Hill his most traitorous adversary and said that she was mentally ill. Anita Hill is still alive, still a lawyer, still a professor of law, and I hope wherever she is, that she had a great day today.
Clarence Thomas said it is hard for him to go out in the public now. He was like without basically somebody bothering him. May his Boston baked bean, big back, bastard ass never have peace. Because, sir, after you have basically closed the door on every ladder that has gotten you to where you are, may your ass never go out and have peace, my good bitch. Okay? Because you aspire to be something that you will never be. And baby, I wish that back then y'all would have listened to us, because I remember telling my aunts and uncles and things, believe Anita Hill. If they would have believed a black woman, baby, we would have never been here. We would have never been here. Because I swear to God, the way that man has kicked down anything that is helpful to black people, all because he hates himself, is wild and crazy. And then thinks he deserves peace as he has been caught doing the things that he has been doing financially, sitting on people's yachts and whatnot. And baby, they don't love you. They don't like you. They just like the fact that you have helped them dismantle the things that they feel black people do not deserve to have. On stolen land, no less. And you thought that telling folks that you can't go out in the public eye and whatnot, and it's just hard for you, was going to make somebody feel sympathy? My good bitch. America's not a real place, and when you watch the fact that this man has literally dismantled democracy by chipping it away piece by piece, and then wants peace, that this man has absolutely decided that he will not step down. He will more than likely go on to glory, still holding that seat. But he wants peace. May you nor that raisin of a wife never see peace. Ever. No grocery shopping, none of that shit. No. Convenience stores, nothing.
Clarence Thomas voted to disenfranchise millions of black voters, voters of color all across America. And all of them should be held accountable, don't get me wrong here. But specifically Clarence Thomas, being only one of 2 black justices, the only black man on the court, votes to dismantle the voting rights of his own community? The same community that worked for decades to uplift black voters and black voices in our government, votes to then go undermine all of that work. That's despicable. Am I surprised? No. Am I disappointed? Always. But this issue just really blows my mind. The cognitive dissonance he can have sitting on the highest court of the land, never has to worry about getting elected, makes a decision that makes it so much more difficult for black voices to be amplified in our government. Shame on you, Clarence Thomas. Shame on you.
Clarence, I understand that for the very first time last year, your wife's family let you come in through the front entrance and not the entrance from the health, but you are going to burn in hell. I'm an atheist, and I hope that heaven and hell are real so that you have to see Martin Luther King and then get kicked down to hell for the things you have done here on earth. This is actually insane. This is one of the things that I've been warning about for years. Like, you can go back, you can find videos of mine from like 2021, 2022 being like, hey, fuck, dude, this is actually terrible.
I heard Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas might be getting in trouble for taking gifts. And this is what I'm going to say to Snow Bunny Clarence Thomas. Snow Bunny Clarence Thomas, if you lose your seat on the Supreme Court bench, Black America is going to have a party. So I hope, Snow Bunny Clarence, I hope Snow Bunny Clarence got some good lawyers helping him to save his job. Because if you lose your job, the celebration that Black America will have to exit Clarence Thomas from the Supreme Court, that celebration we're going to have will be greater than any 4th of July party. It will be greater than any Juneteenth party. It will be greater than any Kwanzaa party. It will be greater than any birthday party. It will be greater than any New Year's Eve party.
Black white supremacist Supreme Court justice voted against affirmative action and the Civil Rights Act while benefiting from both. Now, why is that important? Because now that he's helped dismantle the Civil Rights Act, Trump has said he's now retroactively going after those who hold degrees gained by affirmative action. So 2 things to that. One, that case now has to go in front of the Supreme Court, in front of Clarence. So if he agrees to this, he is stripping himself of both his degree and his position on the bench. So I just can't wait to see how this plays out.
72 years ago today, the Supreme Court handed down the decision that is the foundation of every right that Black Americans fought for and won in the Civil Rights Movement. But one Black man who owes everything to that movement has spent his entire career trying to undo it. That man is Clarence Thomas. On May 17, 1954, the Supreme Court ended racial discrimination in public schools in the case of Brown versus Board of Education. But it would take another decade to pass the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and a year after that, the Voting Rights Act of 1965. That movement made Clarence Thomas possible, and Justice Thurgood Marshall must be turning in his grave to see his successor destroy it. The Brown case is what allowed Thomas to become the first Black student at an all-white high school in Georgia. Another case, Loving versus Virginia, would allow him to divorce his Black wife and marry a white woman. And a third case, Sweat v. Painter, guaranteed Black students a seat at the table of legal education, setting the stage for Thomas to attend Yale Law School. The Civil Rights Movement gave Clarence Thomas every opportunity in his life. Even his current job as a Supreme Court justice came because of affirmative action. And how did he repay that debt? By spending decades on the court dismantling the very laws and policies that made his life possible. Just in the past few weeks, he voted to allow 2 southern states, Louisiana and Alabama, to take away majority Black congressional districts. All skin folk ain't kinfolk. Clarence Thomas is 77 years old, spent almost half his life, 35 years, longer than any of his colleagues, ruining our lives as a Supreme Court justice. He's the poster boy for why we need term limits on the Supreme Court. And he's one more reason why we can't sit out on any election, because the people elected are the people who select and approve the judges with lifetime tenure. How sad that on this solemn anniversary, one of the greatest threats we face is from a bitter black man who forgot where he came from.
Clarence Thomas was my boss for about a year in the Office for Civil Rights, U.S. Department of Education. I wrote about that period in my book, Feisty, a memoir in little pieces. Someone in a comment asked me if I would read the chapter about Clarence. My chapters are like a page and a half long. So, yeah, here's my chapter about Clarence Thomas. It's called Beers with Clarence T. 1981, age 40. The warehouse bar is filling up with softball players. My boss, Clarence Thomas, Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights, is already ensconced at our table with his beer. The beer and the conversations are flowing, but as is his way, Clarence is the quietest person here. I'm not sure why he comes to our softball games and goes with us to drink afterward. I think he's lonely. His wife isn't with him. Word is they are separated. This was his first wife, by the way. We all try to chat with him, as one does with the big boss, to make him more comfortable or to find some common ground or to impress him. I'm always trying to figure him out. It's hard for me to talk with introverts, and Clarence is that, introverted and socially awkward. I listen in on a conversation when the shortstop asks Clarence about his family. 4 brothers and 1 sister, he says. The chatter goes on about his siblings, mostly about his brothers. I see my opportunity to participate. What about your sister? Is she still in Georgia? What is she like? Yes, she's still there. She has kids and is on welfare. Oh, that's hard, I say. Do you help her out? Asks the left fielder. No, I don't approve of welfare. She has children. What kind of example does that set for her children? There is quiet around the table. No one wants to take on the boss. The left fielder, maybe unwisely, persists. You don't financially help her at all? That isn't welfare. That is helping your sister and her children. No, she needs to learn to be self-sufficient, to support herself and her children. Chills. I feel chills.
I have been thinking about what it feels like to watch someone from your community rise to the highest court in their land, and instead of lifting others up, they turn around and question whether you deserve to be lifted at all. There is a specific kind of pain that does not get talked about enough. When Clarence Thomas was confirmed, there was a moment, just a moment, where some people felt hope. A black Supreme Court justice for some folks that represented something, that represented possibility, that represented the idea that black Americans can make it at the top and change things from inside. But here's what y'all have to learn. Making it at the top and changing things are completely 2 different objectives. What Thomas has done is the use of his position not to expand opportunities for black people, but to ask fundamental questions whether those opportunities should exist at all. And he's doing it from inside the most powerful judicial body in America. That is not just a personal choice, there's a structural problem. When you are the only black person in the room making these decisions, your silence on issues that affect your community reads differently. Your vote reads differently. Your legacy reads differently. People talk about betrayal like it has to be dramatic. But some of the deepest wounds come from the quiet decisions made by people who understand exactly what they are doing. Thomas knows what voter suppression looks like. He knows what it means when voting access is restricted in predominantly black neighborhoods. He's not ignorant of history. He has made a choice. And that choice, made quietly in a judicial chamber, has more power than any loud speech or angry statement ever could. The Supreme Court is where policy gets legitimized. When Thomas votes to restrict voting rights or eliminate affirmative action, he's not just expressing an opinion, he's giving government permission, he's making it legal. is making it official, and that carries weight, that echoes through generations. This is a conversation that needs to happen about 1991. What happened during those confirmation hearings? About a moment where Americans had to choose whether to believe a black man or black woman, and how that moment shaped everything that came later. She told her truth. Anita Hill came forward, and whether you believe every detail or not, the response she received was telling. She was questioned in the ways that were designed to shame her. She was isolated, and then she was dismissed. That moment told people something, and that is why you have seen that many black Americans are talking about it. Let me be specific about what is actually happening in real people's lives because of these decisions. A young black girl in Georgia wants to go to Harvard. She is brilliant to get good grades, but now affirmative action is gone. The bar has shifted. Her path is harder, not because she's less capable, but because the structural support that has acknowledged centuries of inequality have been dismissed. A black man in Alabama looks at new voting restrictions being implemented and recognizes them for what they are. The same tactics that his father fought against, except now they have Supreme Court's blessing, they have legitimacy. When you remove protections that were specifically created because your community was specifically being harmed, you are not being neutral. You are not being colorblind. You are making a choice about whose interest matter. I imagine it is lonely. I imagine Thomas lives a life where people from his community see him as a threat, where he can't go out in public without attention, where family gatherings might be complicated, where his legacy is forever entangled with the idea of betrayal. And that does not create a moment of human sympathy. Nobody wants to be seen as having turned on their own. Thomas is one vote among 9. He's not acting alone, but he's a black face on decisions that hurt black people. He is the person who can claim insider knowledge of black community while voting against their interests. So my message to y'all black Americans: you can't depend on individual, no matter how high they rise, to carry the weight of your liberation. You have to build systems and movements that protect your interests. You have to build movements and systems that protect you. Justice Thomas made his own choices. Now you have to make yours. That is where your energy needs to go. That is where your power actually lives. That was it for today. Let me know what you think about this incident of Clarence Thomas. If you have enjoyed watching this one, like it. Don't forget to subscribe for more upcoming episodes.